Some roads don't just take you somewhere, they take you apart. And when you find yourself on one of those roads, the only question left is whether you'll ever really leave. We were 3 days in, heading east out of California, planning to cross into Utah by sundown. I was 25 back then and still convinced road trips were the solution to everything. Burnout, breakups, boredom, all of it. We'd left Fresno with a half-baked route, 2 duffel bags, a tent, and enough trail mix to survive a minor apocalypse. Reese insisted on bringing a paper map, just in case, which I gave him endless grief for. He always liked pretending he was born in the wrong decade. We were somewhere deep in Nevada, rolling along Route 50, the one they call the loneliest road in America. It lived up to the hype. Long stretches of nothing but scrub and sun-bleached road signs. Not a single car had passed us in over half an hour. Reese had crashed out in the passenger seat, mouth open, one arm over his face like he was dodging reality. I was trying to stay focused, chewing the same piece of gum for probably the 10th mile in a row. That's when I saw it. A road sign I didn't recognize. It just said, "Service stop, 2 miles. Gas, food, lodging." No town name, no exit number. Just those words, plain white letters on faded green. I leaned over and nudged Reese's arm. "Hey, we're getting low. I'm pulling off here." He blinked, yawned, and gave a half-hearted nod. I took the next exit, which didn't feel like much of an exit at all. Just a skinny, cracked road curving off into nowhere. No lights, no shoulder, no markers, just broken asphalt disappearing into the dry hills. We drove for a while, way longer than 2 miles. I started to think maybe I'd imagined the sign. Then we passed under this old iron archway, rusted and flaking, with crooked metal letters that barely spelled out "Delane Service." There was one gas pump, just one. Next to it stood a low, blocky building that looked more like a forgotten ranger station than a convenience store. No other cars, no other people. The whole place had that stale, too still vibe, like it was waiting for us to make the first move. Reese was fully awake now, sitting up straight. "This wasn't on the map," he said, which, coming from him, actually meant something. I got out anyway. The pump had no card reader, just a dusty cash slot and one of those mechanical price counters. Reese walked over to check out the store, while I wandered around the building trying to figure out if this place was even operational. Inside, the air was musty and stale, like someone had tried to cover the smell of old plastic with air freshener years ago and given up halfway. The shelves were still stocked, but barely. Mostly ancient cans of soup and sun-bleached snack bags with logos I didn't recognize. There was a bell over the door that gave a weak jingle when Reese pushed it open, but no one came out. I called out a quick "hello." No answer. Just this dry silence. There wasn't even a cash register, just a wooden counter and a single framed photo nailed to the wall behind it. It was old, faded. 2 boys standing in front of a pickup truck. One of them looked exactly like Reese when he was a kid. Same wide grin, same weird cowlick on the left side. I stared at it until Reese stepped up beside me. His face went completely blank. "I've never been here," he said, not looking away. And then, like he'd been there the whole time, a man walked out from the back. No footsteps, no creak of the door, just appeared. He looked rough, 60-ish, maybe older. Thick gray beard, cracked lips, red around the eyes like he hadn't slept in a week. "You boys need fuel?" he asked, voice low and dry. I nodded. "Yeah, pump says cash only." He tilted his head a little, like he was listening to something behind us. "You came in from the west, didn't you?" I didn't answer. He didn't wait. "Don't go east," he said. "Roads are wrong out here." That was it. He turned, rummaged under the counter, and pulled out a tiny metal cash box. Gave me back exact change for the 20 I handed over. No register ding, no receipt. Just the coins, worn from his hand. We filled up in silence. I didn't ask what he meant. I didn't want to know. Reese kept checking the rear view, and I found myself doing the same, but no one followed us. The place just faded into the background as we drove away. No sound, no movement. Then it got weirder. We couldn't find the road back to Route 50. We drove 20 minutes, then 30. I turned around, thinking maybe we'd missed it. But when we came back the same way, the archway was gone. No sign of the gas station, just empty road and dry brush stretching in every direction. We kept going, hoping to hit something familiar. I tried the GPS again, still nothing. Eventually, in the distance, we saw this little white house sitting all by itself. Nothing around it, just this porch light blinking in the middle of the day like a bad joke. We pulled in. A girl, probably 16 or 17, answered the door. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there like she wasn't sure if we were real. When we asked for directions, she hesitated, then walked back inside and came out holding a crumpled sheet of paper. It was a missing persons poster. Our names were on it, mine and Reese's. Same faces, same clothes from 2 days ago. But the paper looked old, like it had been through the wash and left to dry in the sun. I asked her where she got it. She shrugged. My dad found it in a glove box from a wreck. How long ago? I asked. She frowned. I don't know. Before I was born, I think. Reese was already halfway to the car before I even registered that. I didn't ask more. I didn't want her to answer. We drove again, same direction, even though we had no idea where we were going. The road behind us didn't look familiar anymore. Shrubs looked the same, sky looked stuck. Eventually, we spotted this rundown campground. Just a few concrete fire pits, some overgrown spaces, and a trailer that looked like it had been sitting there since the 70s. We pulled over, mostly because we needed to stop and breathe. Inside the trailer was a mess. Empty cans, mildewed blankets, a dented water jug. Looked like someone had tried to live there once and then gave up. On the table was an old road map. Someone had drawn a red X in the middle of nowhere. Under it, written in smeared ballpoint ink, were the words, "You never left." I got in the car, started the engine. We didn't speak, just kept driving until the dirt turned to gravel, and eventually, gravel turned to blacktop. Finally, after what felt like hours, we saw a sign for Eli. The GPS suddenly waked up like nothing had happened. Said we were over 100 miles off route. We didn't talk that night, just checked into the cheapest motel we could find. Slept in the same room, didn't bother locking the bathroom door, left the lights on. I woke up a few times thinking someone was knocking on the window, but when I looked, nothing. Reese moved to Alaska last year. Doesn't pick up when I call. And me? I don't do road trips anymore. I take planes, or I stay home.
Some roads don't care where you're going. They only care that you never arrive. And once you're on them, the question isn't how to leave. It's whether you already have. I was 25 when I drove across Kansas with a guy from work. His name was Joel. He was transferring back to Vermont, and our company didn't want to foot the bill to ship his car. I had a backlog of unused vacation days, and when he asked if I'd ride with him and fly back from the East Coast, I figured, why not? It seemed like an easy break from the usual, something different. I didn't expect it to feel like it would never end. We left on a Friday morning in his silver Honda, old, kinda beat up, lots of miles. Joel handled the first leg from Wichita through most of Missouri. We switched near a town called Ashbury. He crashed in the passenger seat, headphones in, totally out. I drove. Just me in the long, flat stretch of highway, with the occasional billboard and exit signs sliding past. Around sunset, we pulled off for gas in a little place called Rule. I'd never heard of it, but the station looked fine, older but clean. It was wedged between a closed-down antique store and a tiny garage with one open bay. I filled the tank, grabbed a couple of protein bars and some trail mix, and Joel stayed passed out the entire time. Back on the road, I noticed my GPS started rerouting. Nothing dramatic, just a soft ping and a new line across the screen. I figured it was avoiding traffic or maybe road work ahead. It told me to exit in a couple of miles and follow a string of back roads. I didn't really think twice. Joel had said he liked scenic routes anyway, and honestly, I kinda did too. The first stretch was fine. Quiet trees lining the road on both sides. No other cars, but nothing creepy. Then it got darker, fast. Streetlights disappeared. No houses, no signs. Just narrow, uneven roads and a lot of woods pressing in around us. My phone lost reception about 10 minutes in. Joel still hadn't stirred when we passed a mailbox shaped like a giant hand. I thought it was funny, tacky, but weirdly creative. Then I saw one shaped like a dragon's head. Then a huge boot. Then what looked like a plastic cow with the lid of the mailbox sticking out of its side. I chuckled, thinking maybe this was some strange local tradition. But they kept coming. Dozens, all different, all slightly off. And that's when I noticed the car behind us. I hadn't seen it pull out from anywhere. It just sort of appeared. A dusty sedan, no lights, staying perfectly back. Never closing in, never falling behind. I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was tired. We hit a fork in the road. GPS told me left. I took it. The car behind us did too. Right then, Joel finally woke up, stretched, looked out the back window, and said, "Has that car been following us long?" I didn't know how to answer. We kept going. Another few miles. Still nothing. No towns, no animals, not even roadkill. Just the dark pressing in. Then we passed a sign. Pale yellow, chipped, full of bullet holes. "Welcome to Lever Ridge." Joel squinted at it and said, "This isn't on any map. I checked." I agreed. I've driven through plenty of forgotten towns, but this one felt like a draft someone forgot to finish, like it had never really opened for business. We rolled into what looked like the town center. A few sagging buildings, an old bar, a locksmith, something that might have been a tax office. Everything looked abandoned except the bar, which still had lights on inside. I pulled in, thinking we'd ask for directions. The car behind us just kept going. Joel didn't like it. "Let's just turn around," he said. "I just want to check where we are first," I told him. Inside the bar, it was dead silent. No music, no hum of appliances. Just one guy sitting in a corner booth, eating something thick and brown straight out of a metal pot with a soup ladle. No bartender, no one else. He looked up at us with one normal eye and one that looked like cheap glass, maybe not even fitted properly. "Long way from home," he said, voice flat, like he'd said it 1,000 times before. I asked him how to get back to the main road. He didn't answer right away, just another slurp from the ladle. Then he pointed toward a door in the back and said, "Through there. Keep driving. Don't stop. Don't get out. no matter what you see. It sounded theatrical, something out of a bad movie. But Joel was clearly rattled. We mumbled thanks and walked out. Back in the car, my phone buzzed once. Just once. A single notification popped up. No text, just a red location pin blinking on a completely blank map. The name was listed as unknown sender. I tapped it. The app crashed. We followed the dirt road behind the bar. It sloped down into a low wooded valley I could swear hadn't been there before. Things got weirder. Every mile or so, there was something on the side of the road. First, a pair of brown leather boots, then an overturned stroller, then a desk chair, then a recliner, then 5 identical chairs lined up perfectly, all facing the road, like they were waiting for a show. We passed a swing set sitting alone in an open field. The swings were moving slowly. There was no wind. Joel hadn't said a word since we left the bar. He gripped the door with one hand and tapped his knee with the other, fast and steady. Then we saw her. A woman stood in the center of the road, pale coat, too big for her, holding a gas can. Her head was cocked like she was listening to something distant. I eased off the gas. Joel practically shouted, "Don't stop." So I didn't. We passed her. Her face looked off, like her expression didn't match what her face was doing. She didn't wave, didn't flinch, just stood there, still holding the can. Half a mile later, we saw her again. Same coat, same can. This time, I didn't slow down. We saw her a third time, then a fourth. Same everything. She never moved, never turned, just kept showing up. Joel snapped, "Go faster, don't look at her." I did. The road got narrower, the trees seemed closer. Then we hit something. I slammed the brakes, we skidded and stopped halfway across the road. Nothing there, nothing in front of us, nothing behind. The GPS was frozen, the clock on the dash had reset to 0. Joel whispered, "There's something wrong with this place." I nodded. We didn't argue. We turned around and tried to reverse every turn we'd made, but nothing looked familiar. The weird mailboxes were gone, so were the signs. Even the buildings were gone. We kept going until we saw lights ahead, a Shell station. We pulled in and I jumped out like I'd been holding my breath for miles. Inside, the guy behind the counter barely glanced at us. Just another evening from home. I asked where we were. He said, "You're in Ridgefall, just off Route 79. That was over 100 miles west of where we'd left the highway.
There are roads that go nowhere. And then there are roads that go somewhere you can't leave. The difference? You won't know until it's too late. I just graduated from a small college in Vermont and figured I'd drive cross-country to Arizona solo. I had a job lined up in a couple of weeks, but I wasn't in a rush. No GPS, no tight schedule. Just a stack of old gas station maps, a couple of rest stops I'd circled in pen, and the kind of vague plan that sounds romantic until you're out in the middle of nowhere with no cell service. That was the point, though, to drift, be unfindable for a while. I'd pull off the road into tiny towns with no names, checking into motels where the front desk was just a bell and a handwritten ledger. I didn't even tell anyone exactly where I was going. It felt clean, quiet. Somewhere around day 3, in the gap between northern Arkansas and eastern Oklahoma, my phone just gave up. No bars, no Wi-Fi, nothing. I wasn't too concerned. I had printed directions to the next place, about 60 miles west. I still remember the road number because the sign was so wrecked it felt like a warning. Route 41, full of rust and bullet holes. After maybe 20 minutes, the road got rough. Asphalt cracked like dry skin. No towns, no exits, not even mile markers. Just this skinny two-lane road weaving through fields that looked like they hadn't been touched in years. Every now and then, I'd pass a fence that didn't seem to belong to anything, or a mailbox half sunk into the ground, pointing at nothing. I didn't start to get uneasy until I saw the same van for the third time. The first time, it was just sitting in a clearing. Beige, old Chevy, kinda patchy with mismatched primer spots. Nothing dramatic. The second time, it was pulled partway onto the shoulder, enough to make me glance twice. The third time, it was angled slightly into the road, like it had moved, like maybe someone wanted to slow me down. It didn't have plates. The rear bumper was tied on with bungee cords, and both side mirrors were gone. The windshield had this big spiderweb crack on the passenger side, like it had taken a hard hit and just kept going. That second pass made me think I'd messed up somewhere. So I pulled over, dug the map out of the glove box, checked it twice, even backtracked a little. But somehow, I still don't know how, I ended up right in front of that same van again. This time, the driver's door was open. I didn't stop, just kept going, a little faster now. Kept checking the mirror every few seconds. Nothing behind me, nothing moving. For a while, it was just me and the road again. Then I saw something up ahead, just a lump in the middle of the lane. At first, I thought it was roadkill, maybe a deer or a dog. But when I got closer, I realized it wasn't an animal at all. It was a gray hoodie, balled up like someone had dropped it and soaked through with something dark. Could have been oil, could have been something else. I swerved around it and kept driving. 5 minutes later, there was another one. Same hoodie, but this one was laid out flat, dry. Then I passed a kid's backpack, then a baseball glove. Each one spaced out like breadcrumbs, stuff people carry, stuff you might leave behind if you didn't leave on purpose. Eventually, the road curved around a low hill, and I saw a gas station. Old place, maybe cinder block, small. One of those fading red awnings stretched over 2 pumps, both roped off with caution tape. No cars, no lights, just a single payphone bolted to the outside wall. But the door was open. I got out. I got out just to look around. The air changed the second I stepped onto the lot. I know that sounds weird, but it did. Like all the background noise, wind, bugs, even the sound of my car cooling off, just vanished. All I could hear was the crunch of gravel under my shoes. Inside was mostly empty. A few dented cans on dusty shelves, a stack of old road maps. And behind the counter stood this tall guy, square build, staring past me like I wasn't even there. "Hey," I said, "you open?" He blinked slow, didn't move much. "Pumps are closed," he said. "You lost?" "Sort of," I told him. "I'm trying to get to Lakeview Motel, about an hour west." He didn't answer right away, just stared through me. Then finally, "There's no Lakeview out this way, not anymore." That landed hard. Something in my gut dropped. "What do you mean?" Now he looked at me, really looked. His eyes were bloodshot and shiny, like he'd been up all night. "You should turn around, get back to the highway. That road doesn't go where it used to." I asked if he meant Route 41. He nodded just once. "People take it thinking it's a shortcut," he said. "It's not. It loops." I asked what that meant. What kind of road loops? He didn't explain. Just walked to the door, held it open, and said, "Leave before it sees you stop." I didn't ask what it was. I just turned around and headed back to the car. Only now, the car wouldn't start. Nothing, not even a click. Battery had been fine literally 10 minutes ago. I popped the hood, checked the cables, everything looked normal. When I looked up, the gas station guy was still standing in the doorway, just watching. I got back in and tried again. Nothing. And then I heard it. The soft crunch of gravel behind me. I didn't mean to look. I already knew. That beige van. It rolled up slow, like it had all the time in the world. No headlights. Driver sat tall behind the wheel. Wide shoulders, thick arms. He didn't glance at me, just pulled up beside my car and stopped. I didn't wait. I jumped out and ran toward the station. The guy who'd opened the door was gone. The door slammed shut behind me, locked. I turned around just in time to see the driver step out of the van. He had something in his hand, a length of cable or wire. Not a weapon exactly, but not nothing either. I held my breath, backed slowly into the store. There was no back exit. Then came this sound, a soft tap, 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 metal on glass, over and over. He was dragging the cable across the door. Then silence. It went on like that for a long time. Could have been minutes, could have been an hour. Eventually, I peeked. The van was gone. My car was still there. I got in, turned the key. It started like nothing had ever been wrong. I didn't ask why. I drove until the road turned into something real. Strip malls, traffic lights, gas stations with LED signs. I pulled into the first real town I saw and parked in the lot of a food master. Didn't even try to check into a motel. Just reclined the seat and stayed there until morning.
Sometimes the road doesn't just take you somewhere. It makes you part of something you were never meant to see. And when you survive, the question isn't what happened. It's whether you were ever really there at all. I was 28 when Sydney and I decided it was time to get out. She had just broken off an engagement after catching her fiancé lying about something serious. And I'd quit a job that had been draining me for over a year. We were both stuck, mentally and emotionally, in that hollow in-between where everything feels too heavy and too quiet at the same time. So we planned a road trip from Denver to Portland. 3 days, just us, the open road, and a long list of weird roadside attractions to chase down along the way. No timelines, no big expectations, just the need to get far away from our regular lives. We threw some clothes and bags, loaded up my beat-up hatchback with snacks, and hit the road before sunrise with that dumb sense of hope people get when they think running away for a few days might actually fix things. The first day felt like exactly what we needed. We stopped to see a 30-foot cowboy statue just past Cheyenne, wander through an old ghost town full of mannequins dressed like pioneers,
and got free pie at a diner in Idaho because the waitress liked our playlist. That night, we found a cheap roadside motel, watched sitcom reruns until we both passed out, and didn't talk about any of the heavy stuff. It was the kind of silence that felt like breathing room. The next morning, somewhere past a stretch of dry hills, we spotted a handmade sign that read, "Scenic Detour Historic Route." It pointed toward a narrow road that wasn't marked on either of our GPS apps. The road was freshly paved and headed west. We figured it'd be a nice break from the interstate. We didn't even hesitate. Maybe we should have. About an hour in, the world flattened out. No towns, no other cars. Just endless dry grass and low hills repeating like bad wallpaper. Our phones lost signal, the GPS froze. Even the radio gave up and dissolved into static. We laughed about it for a while, pretending we were in a horror movie, making up dumb names for fake killers. But that stopped once we realized how long it had been since we'd seen another soul. Then the gas station appeared. One minute the road was empty, the next there it was. A single wooden building with a sun-bleached roof and a single pump out front. The windows weren't boarded up and the door was propped open. I told Sydney we should stop, partly because we were low on gas, but mostly because I needed to talk to another human being, anyone. Inside, it was dead quiet. Dust on everything. No price tags, just shelves of old cans and warm soda. It didn't even smell like a place where people ever actually shopped. We stood there for a while, thinking maybe no one worked there. Then the man came out. He stepped through a beaded curtain like it was a stage. Tall, bone-thin, and completely silent. His skin looked drained, and his white blonde hair was almost translucent. He didn't greet us, just stood there, watching. I asked if the pump worked. He nodded. I asked if he took cards. Another nod. No words. I handed him my card, which he ran through a dusty old reader. It beeped once, then nothing. No error, no confirmation, just a beep. He handed the card back and said, "Fill up and go west." That's all he said. We didn't argue. As I pumped gas, Sydney said she didn't think he ever blinked. I tried to shrug it off, but I was starting to feel the same thing she was. Like we'd slipped out of something familiar and into something much older and quieter. We drove on. Still no signs, no cars, nothing. Just a long black road cutting through a landscape that stopped making sense the longer we were in it. When we saw the abandoned sedan, doors open, no one inside, no tracks in the dust, we didn't even stop, just stared as we passed. Then Sydney said she saw someone in the rear view. I looked, nothing. But a few miles later, I saw it too. A man standing perfectly still behind us, way off in the distance. I blinked, and he was gone. We didn't talk about it. As night fell, the road darkened so fast it felt unnatural. The headlights barely cut through it. Then, out of nowhere, a motel appeared. It looked half dead. Buzzing red neon sign, flickering lights, empty parking lot. But we were exhausted and didn't care. The woman at the front desk looked like she'd just come in from the rain, wet, stringy hair clinging to her face. She handed us a key without asking our names. Just said, "Upstairs, second door." The hallway smelled like mildew. The room was freezing and the sheets felt damp. No TV, no clock, just a mirror bolted to the wall directly across from the bed. We locked the door, got into bed fully clothed. I couldn't sleep. Every little creak felt amplified, like the building was listening. Around 3 in the morning, Sydney whispered, Someone's in the hallway. We sat up, listened. Footsteps, slow, heavy. Then another, closer. Sydney gripped my arm and said, "What if it's the man from the road?" We froze. The footsteps stopped outside our door. Then something pressed gently against the handle, not turning it, just feeling it. I held my breath. Then the door jolted like someone slammed their palm against it. Sydney screamed. I jumped up, grabbed the bedside lamp, and backed toward the window. There was movement in the hallway, just a shadow, but it wasn't walking away. It was waiting. I yanked open the nightstand drawer. There was nothing inside. No phone, no Bible, just a single key with no label. I opened the window. It was bolted shut. The glass didn't move. I tried the bathroom. No exit. The whole room felt like a dead end. The hallway went quiet. Then something scraped across the door. Slow, deliberate, like nails. I told Sydney to get ready to run. She nodded, still holding her shoulder where she'd hit the floor when the door jolted. I counted to 3, unlocked the door, and threw it open. There was a man standing there. Not the guy from the gas station. This one was younger, in a stained t-shirt and jeans, barefoot, holding something small and sharp, like a piece of broken mirror. He didn't move. I slammed the door. He slashed it as it closed. The mirror shard sliced through Sydney's jacket and into her arm. She screamed again, this time in real pain. I shoved a chair under the handle, pulled her into the bathroom, and locked the second door. She was bleeding, not deep, but enough to panic me. I wrapped her arm with a towel. She kept saying, "He was just watching. He didn't say anything. He was just watching." After 10 minutes, it went quiet again. I waited until sunrise. Then we ran. There was no one in the hallway, but outside the room, on the floor, was a photograph. It showed us, Sydney and I, in the motel bed, taken from outside the window. We didn't speak, just grabbed our bags and ran to the car. We left the key on the counter. About 20 minutes down the road, we finally saw a sign, "Welcome to Oregon." We made it to Portland that night. Sydney's arm was shaking, so we immediately went to the hospital. A few stitches, some bruises. The doctor said it could have been worse. She stayed with her sister for a few weeks after we got back. Took a month to fully recover. Some stops aren't just bad luck. They're the wrong place at the worst possible moment. And when you're caught between desperation and the law, survival becomes a question of inches and seconds. I was 31 when it happened. Just me, a rental car, and a few days off I didn't know what to do with. I'd left from Winslow that morning with no real destination. I just wanted to drive until I got bored, turn around, and come back with my head a little clearer. Somewhere after midnight, I found myself cutting through a dry stretch of highway. No lights, no cars, not even mile markers. My fuel gauge hit a quarter tank, and that's when I saw the sign. Old wood, almost falling apart, staked in the ground on the right. Gas, snacks, services, open. No branding, no logo, just an arrow pointing down a side road. I was tired, and the needle was getting low, so I took it. It was a narrow 2-lane road with cracked pavement and desert brush growing over the shoulders. After maybe 10 miles, it opened into what looked like an abandoned truck stop. One gas pump, a single overhead light buzzing above it, and a low, square building behind a dusty glass door. The sign above read Mears General. There were no other cars. I parked at the pump.
The place looked like it hadn't had a delivery truck in a decade. Still, I figured I could at least get fuel. I stepped out, credit card in hand, and checked the pump. It was old, really old. Analog dials, faded paint. I was still deciding whether it even worked when I heard the door open behind me. A man stepped out. He was tall, gaunt, wearing a windbreaker too big for him. In his right hand, he held a pistol, low by his side. Not pointed, just there. "Hey," he said, calm as anything. "You're going to help me out for a minute." I froze. My first thought was that he was robbing the place and mistook me for the clerk. But then I looked at his eyes. They weren't wild, just alert, calculating, like he was working through possibilities fast. He waved the gun once. "Inside." I didn't argue. The store smelled like bleach and old carpet. Inside was dark, just a few overhead fluorescents flickering. No music, no humming fridges. The shelves were mostly empty. Dusty bags of chips, expired candy. It felt like stepping into a memory no one maintained. He moved behind me, still holding the gun down by his leg, but close. "You're going to stay calm," he said, almost gently. "You're just bad timing. I need a ride, and you're it." There was no clerk, no one else in sight. I didn't even know if the place was supposed to be open. He pushed me into a small back room. Old desk, peeling linoleum, one barred window too high to see out of. "You sit," he said. I sat. "I just need you not to do anything stupid until I figure out how long I've got," he said. He was pacing now, not frantic, just twitchy. He checked his watch, then his phone, then looked out the door, the way someone would if they knew police were coming. I asked, "What did you do?" He looked at me like it was the dumbest question in the world. "They broke into my house, took everything. I just took it back." He didn't explain more. He didn't need to. I wasn't trying to get into a debate with a guy holding a loaded weapon. We sat in silence for maybe 5 minutes. I could hear the wind outside brushing against the glass, the pump's slow creak in the breeze. Then, in the distance, sirens. Faint, but coming fast. He straightened. They tracked me here. His eyes darted around the room, searching for options. "You're going to drive me out." I said nothing. He pulled me up by the arm and shoved me toward the front. My legs were stiff, but I moved. At the door, he peeked out. "If they see me, they shoot. You're the cover." I remember my hand shaking as I reached for the door handle. That's when the cruiser's spotlight hit the building. He shouted, ducked, pulled me down. Glass shattered a second later. The front window blew out as a loudspeaker blared, "Drop your weapon, come out slowly." He cursed and yanked me behind a shelf. "We're not going to make it out the front." I nodded without saying a word. I knew I wasn't in control here. I also knew that whatever was about to happen, I was in the middle of it. He pulled me by the collar through a side door into a storage room. More broken shelves, a mop sink, one other door, probably leading outside behind the building. He cracked it open, looked. I saw his shoulders tense. I guessed they had the place surrounded. Then everything happened fast. He spun toward me, panicked. "Now," he muttered, "they won't shoot if I've got you." I backed away, hands up, trying to speak, but he was already grabbing me. The barrel of the gun jabbed into my ribs as he pushed me toward the door. I felt his grip slipping. He was sweating, nervous, breathing fast. Outside, I saw 2 cruisers in the lot, guns drawn, spotlight sweeping. The second we stepped out, someone shouted, "Drop it now." The man hesitated, and then everything exploded.
A shot cracked through the air. I felt heat slam into my leg. My whole body crumpled. The pain was like fire tearing through muscle. I hit the ground hard, gasping. I don't know if he fired. I don't know who hit who first. All I remember is the blur of movement, the police rushing in, someone yelling, "Suspect down," and the hard grip of hands dragging me backward. I faded in and out after that. Sirens, blood, gravel against my cheek, someone shouting for a medic. I heard someone say, "Civilian hit in the leg." They loaded me into an ambulance. The cop beside me asked questions, but I couldn't get the words out. They patched me up in a hospital outside Grants. The bullet had gone clean through, missing anything vital. They kept me overnight. A detective came by the next morning and told me the man was wanted for armed robbery, assault, and a half-dozen other charges. He hadn't made it. I asked if he'd shot me. The detective said no. My injury came from a police round. Wrong place, wrong moment. I'd gotten between them and a man they'd been chasing across 3 counties. Story 6. Kindness has no expiration date. Sometimes it reaches across decades, across life and death itself, to shelter the lost. And when it does, you have to ask yourself, who really saved who? It was supposed to be a quick weekend trip, just a few hours south to visit my cousins, Milo and Franklin. We hadn't seen each other in a while, and I figured I'd leave work early, avoid the worst of Friday traffic, and maybe take a more scenic route on the way down. I've always liked driving through back roads. Less noise, fewer trucks, a little more space to think. I didn't bother with GPS, just glanced at the map before I left, made a mental note of the turns, and figured I'd be fine. There was no cell service once I got into the woods, but that didn't bother me at first. The road dipped and twisted through some heavy tree cover, the kind that blocks out most of the sky. It felt like I hadn't seen another car for at least 20 minutes. And I was starting to feel that weird middle-of-nowhere tension when the engine gave this soft popping sound, and everything just stopped. No warning lights, no sputtering, just one soft noise like someone had popped a balloon under the hood. And then silence. I tapped the gas. Nothing. I tried the brake, coasted to the side. I managed to roll into a gravel pull-off barely wide enough for the car. I sat there blinking, trying to process what had just happened. I turned the key once, twice, 3 times. It didn't even try to crank. No clicks, no dashboard lights, just dead. I lifted the hood like I knew what I was doing and stared at the engine for a minute, then gave up. Everything looked normal, but what did I know? I don't think I even touched anything. Just stood there with my hands on my hips like that would somehow help. I climbed back into the driver's seat and checked my phone. 6% battery, no bars. Awesome.
Kindness has no expiration date. Sometimes it reaches across decades, across life and death itself, to shelter the lost. And when it does, you have to ask yourself, who really saved who? It was supposed to be a quick weekend trip, just a few hours south to visit my cousins, Milo and Franklin. We hadn't seen each other in a while, and I figured I'd leave work early, avoid the worst of Friday traffic, and maybe take a more scenic route on the way down. I've always liked driving through back roads. Less noise, fewer trucks, a little more space to think. I didn't bother with GPS, just glanced at the map before I left, made a mental note of the turns, and figured I'd be fine. There was no cell service once I got into the woods, but that didn't bother me at first. The road dipped and twisted through some heavy tree cover, the kind that blocks out most of the spy. It felt like I hadn't seen another car for at least 20 minutes, and I was starting to feel that weird middle-of-nowhere tension when the engine gave this soft popping sound, and everything just stopped. No warning lights, no sputtering, just one soft noise, like someone had popped a balloon under the hood. And then, silence. I tapped the gas, nothing. I tried the brake, coasted to the side. I managed to roll into a gravel pull-off barely wide enough for the car. I sat there blinking, trying to process what had just happened. I turned the key once, twice, 3 times. It didn't even try to crank. No clicks, no dashboard lights. Just dead. I lifted the hood like I knew what I was doing and stared at the engine for a minute, then gave up. Everything looked normal, but what did I know? I don't think I even touched anything, just stood there with my hands on my hips like that would somehow help. I climbed back into the driver's seat and checked my phone. 6% battery, no bars. Awesome. I waited maybe 20 minutes, maybe more. I kept thinking someone would drive by, but the road stayed empty. Trees pressed in on both sides, all crooked and leaning like they were listening. I wrapped myself tighter in my hoodie and opened the last of the water bottle I had in the glove box. I didn't want to leave the car, but it was already getting colder, and I knew I couldn't sit there all night. So I locked up, slung my backpack over one shoulder, and started walking back the way I'd come. It was the only direction I really had. I don't know how long I walked, maybe half a mile, maybe less, before I saw this beat-up old mailbox on the side of the road. It was hanging crooked off a rusted post, the kind of thing you'd miss if you weren't paying attention. The name Randall was carved into the side in uneven, blocky letters. Behind it, a thin, dark path curved into the woods. I couldn't see a house, but I could just barely make out smoke rising above the treetops. Not much, but enough to know someone might be home. I stood there for a second, staring down that path. Every part of me was saying, don't do this. But the idea of walking another 5 miles in the dark didn't sound much better. I called out just to see if anyone might hear me. No response. So I stepped off the road and followed the trail. It wasn't long, maybe 2 or 3 minutes of walking, before the trees opened up into a small clearing. There was a cabin sitting there, tucked into the brush like it had grown out of the ground. Modest but well kept. Pale green shutters on the windows, smoke curling from the chimney. A wind chime made from silver spoons and forks hanging beside the door, clinking gently in the breeze. I knocked once. The door opened slowly, and this older woman stepped out. Gray hair pulled back into a neat bun, pressed flannel shirt, sturdy jeans. She looked like the kind of person who kept her kitchen spotless and remembered your birthday even if you didn't. She didn't ask who I was or why I was there. She just looked me over like she already knew the story and said, "You look cold. Come on in." I hesitated, stammered something about my car dying, about being stranded, about trying to find a phone. She didn't seem concerned. "You can use the landline in the morning," she said. "Nobody around here answers at night." Her name was June. She didn't ask for mine right away. She said I could stay the night if I didn't mind the cot in the back room, and she had a pot of stew on the stove if I was hungry. I offered her some cash, whatever was in my wallet, but she just waved me off like the idea annoyed her. "I had a boy your age once," she said. He never made it home from the service. House is quiet now. It's nice to have company. She led me into the kitchen, small, clean, with checkered curtains and a little table that probably hadn't moved in 20 years. The stew smelled amazing. Beef, maybe, or venison, thick with vegetables. It was simple, but it tasted better than anything I'd eaten in weeks. Could have just been the hunger, or the weird comfort of being somewhere warm when everything had gone sideways. We sat and talked while we ate. She asked about my job, where I lived, if I liked it. She didn't overshare, didn't tell stories unless I asked, just listened like she actually cared. After dinner, she showed me to the back room. There was a single cot against the wall with a heavy patchwork quilt folded neatly on top. The whole place smelled like cedar and something faintly floral, maybe old lavender. I lay down and stared at the ceiling for a while, trying to process everything. The silence felt different in that house, thicker, but not uncomfortable. I fell asleep quicker than I thought I would. When I woke up, it was still early. Pale gray light came through the window. The fire had gone out, but the coals in the hearth were still warm. I called out June's name. No answer. The house felt still. I walked through the rooms, quiet, clean, unchanged. Checked the porch. No sign of her. Her car, an old cream-colored Buick I'd seen parked near the woods, was gone. I waited a bit, thinking maybe she'd run an errand, maybe she'd be back soon. But after half an hour or so, I left a thank you note on the kitchen table. I pulled out my phone, 3% left, and took a quick photo of the cabin from the edge of the woods just to remember the place, just in case I wanted to send a card or something. I walked back to the road. The air was sharp and quiet. About 40 minutes later, a guy in a green pickup passed by and slowed down. He offered me a ride, said he could tow my car to a nearby mechanic in Caldwell. I told him what had happened, how the car died, how I found the cabin, how kind June had been. He glanced at me sideways. What cabin? Randall's place, I said, about half a mile down the road. Green shutters, smoke coming from the chimney. June Randall, she let me stay the night. His face shifted a little, not scared exactly, but something else. Caution, maybe. Disbelief. You saw someone in that house? Yeah, I said. She made stew, let me crash in the back room. He didn't say anything for a second. Then he pulled the truck over and turned to look at me directly. That cabin's been empty since '91, he said. Nobody's lived up there since June died. Her boy was killed overseas. She took it hard. Used to take in folks sometimes, drifters, people who needed a place to sleep, but she passed more than 30 years ago. I didn't know what to say. I showed him the photo on my phone. He looked at it for a long time, then handed it back without a word. We drove in silence after that. He towed my car, never charged me, just said, "She was a good woman. Sounds like she still is."